Welcome to the Mental Health Boot Camp Podcast. This is the podcast where 4 psychotherapists, 3 of us Canadian, 1 of us American, serve you cutting edge mental health knowledge. I am Dr. Ryan Howes, a last born child from Pasadena, California.
Oh, and I'm Dr. Brooke Lewis, a middle child, only female from British Columbia.
And I'm Joanna Boyd, youngest of 4 from Port Moody.
I'm Chris Boyd, second youngest of 4 from Coquitlam.
Well, welcome everybody. Yes, no oldests here, huh?
No.
That's an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we'll get into that in a minute, but we're all dressed up semi-festively for the holidays here.
Indeed.
Our second kind of holiday show, as we have done this podcast for a little while now.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's remarkable that Christmas time is just around the corner.
It really is.
Just a few more sleeps, but yeah, for all of the Canadian, not all of the Canadian families, the 2 Canadian families that are present today, we're very big Christmas Eve families. So It's almost like more exciting that Christmas Eve is coming than Christmas Day in a weird way. Christmas Day feels very different from Christmas Eve.
What's the difference? I mean, I'll tell you my American story on this, which I think is shared by a lot of people who celebrate Christmas. Not everyone does, of course. That Christmas Eve is kind of anticipatory. Oftentimes the kids get to open 1 present that day or that evening. Sometimes people go to a church service. There's often a fairly nice meal. Sometimes people watch a movie, Christmas movie, or read the story "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." And then get yourself to bed, kids, because tomorrow morning, Santa's coming tonight, all that stuff. And then the big explosion is Christmas morning with all the presents and gifts and all that stuff. So what's different up there?
Nope, that's about it. It's the same.
But still Christmas Eve is the bigger time?
Only just for our 2 families, and anyone else. I don't know if it's like a mass thing. More just for us.
Yeah, it's probably more nostalgic. I know for our family, we get together on Christmas Eve, and of course, as we're younger, have a nice dinner. Have I think we talked about this in the last year's podcast, but the Danish tradition of having rice pudding. Sometimes we go to church. So yeah.
We have more French, I don't know if it's French Canadian tradition of tourtière at like a meat pie we have at midnight, as well as some champagne.
After we turned the age of 10, we started having champagne,
Yeah.
If you
We don't
turn
do
10?
the tortilla.
Yeah, totally kidding, just in case my parents are listening.
Got it.
Or someone else. But Christmas Day, of course, growing up was a pretty magical time too. You mentioned the explosion of gifts, waking up and have a hard time falling asleep, and that excitement when you get up. And very fortunate growing up that there were some gifts under that tree, having brunch and whatnot. So I think as we've gotten older, I can't speak for Joanna, but I think Christmas Eve probably takes a little more precedence over Christmas Day because of the shift from gifts to connection. Because now, as our siblings have gotten older and have kids, they kind of do their own Christmas Day tradition. So we all get together on Christmas Eve still. So I think it kind of naturally has gone in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good summary of it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something about the anticipation too. And I think it's just been what we kind of hold dear because of all the switching traditions, like Chris said. So yeah. I still wish I woke up with a stocking at the base of my bed though, because my parents are always good with that. And you kind of dump it out, and I'd sneak into my siblings' rooms and kind of see what they got. And then there's just like a stillness in the living room. It was so quiet, and you could see all the presents under the tree. Like, it was very cool, kind of before the hustle and bustle. It's I think as a kid, you have so many good memories of that.
You'd have the stocking on the bed?
Yeah, so when we go to bed, they're hung above the fireplace. But when we wake up, they're filled and they're kind of on our bed by our feet. And yeah, so they were full to the brim,
Yeah.
always with the orange at the bottom.
Yeah.
And yeah, and usually a book of lifesavers was always a guarantee too.
Oh
And then
yeah.
I remember
So
those.
random.
Where did those go? I remember those things. That's great.
so yeah, it was just very neat. So, but anyways,
That's great.
Yeah, no, our stockings stay by the fire. We never had a mantle on our fireplace. So the stockings were just like on the floor in front of the fireplace. And then, yeah, no, they never made it to our bedrooms, but I would be the early riser waking up. So I'd probably wake up at, I don't know, between 3 and 4 in the morning, like just ridiculously way too excited. And my parents' room is right across the hallway from mine, and everything was on the same floor. So if I left my room and looked left, I would be able to see down the hall and into the living room and see the presents and stuff. But I knew if Santa hadn't come yet and I saw it, then I was risking Santa not coming. So I'd like go like this and run across the hall to my parents' room and let them know I was awake and could I get up yet? And my dad would say, no, you have to go back to bed. So then I'd run across the hall the other way until I was allowed to get up. And then I would have toast with my dad, peanut butter toast. And then when he said I was allowed to wake my brothers up, I would go in their room and rip the pillows from under them and hit them with them and let them know that it was Christmas time.
Oh,
Yeah, I woke them up very excitedly. Yeah,
you ended the year on a naughty note, didn't you?
I guess so. It was just too much excitement.
Hey, the presents are already there. That's okay.
How much Santa could do at that point.
He's not going to return them. He's not doing that.
Oh, that's great. I do remember getting up and asking my parents, can I get up now? Can I get up yet? You know, it's like 3:30 in the morning. Can I get up now?
Nope.
No. Very patient parents.
Yeah, they're like, it's 3 a.m. Go back to bed.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Just a ball of energy in there, though. You're like, whoo.
Right. My dad probably been up until 2 putting together a bike or something. And can I get up now? Oh, yes. Oh, fun. That is definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And we did talk a few episodes ago about the wellness through the holidays and how nostalgia can make things, it's fun, but it can be a little stressful. For some folks, brings a little sadness too, and that's totally understandable.
Yeah.
So,
And then a little segue, we also kind of talked about how that stress is sometimes related to family. And now we're going to be, see the segue? And today's topic is actually the book. We have a book club today about
we
siblings.
do have a book club, which I guess we might as well just go ahead and hit our intro. Joe, take it away.
oh,
Oh, hold on. The audio intro.
Your jingle.
Your song.
it's right with the book.
Take the audio away. Go.
Such a good jingle.
That's a good jingle.
Way to go, Joe. Way to take it away.
Thank you. Thanks. Totally forgot I was gonna do that. Thanks for the reminder.
Well, Joe, take it
Oh.
away. You were like really ready to jump in there.
You
With the
were
book in
ready.
hand.
Perfect.
Yeah, the book is called The Sibling Effect. What the bonds among brothers and sisters reveal about us. And it's Jeffrey Kluger is the author of that. And I was trying to think, what year was this done? 2017? 2018?
I think it was like 2011 or something.
Oh,
About 10. No, I could be very wrong.
you're right. You're right. 2011.
2011. Kluger, who's not a therapist, he's an editor for Time Magazine and written several books on various topics. But I think he was just a little interested in siblings and how they interact with each other, and had a lot of story to tell. So
Indeed.
yeah, lots of personal stories. I mean, I'll start with that.
Yeah. How do you feel about that, Ryan? On a book review level, how do you feel about that?
Well, it's I certainly enjoy storytelling. I enjoy people telling their own personal stories. That makes it interesting and illuminates points for sure. This felt a little clunky to me, I've got to say, because it felt like at times it wasn't clear whether this is like a memoir, because there are a lot of stories about his own family and his siblings, his brothers. So I was kind of wondering, okay, is he trying to make this into a memoir, or is he trying to use these points to illustrate some of the research that he's citing, which he does to some degree, although sometimes his personal stories contradict the research that he's talking about. So I don't know, it felt to me like it didn't always fit. Chris had alluded in a couple episodes to the start of the book and how that's the stories that he's telling at the beginning of the book feel a little bit like, whoa, where are we going here? So I'm not sure. I almost feel like it could have been split into two books. One that's just talking about the sibling effect and what role siblings have and what does the research say. And maybe he just really wanted to also write a memoir about his relationship with his siblings. And maybe that could be a little a separate, smaller book. I don't know. So to summarize, Brooke, it didn't always fit with me. Nice at times, but felt like a little too much.
What do you, Chris and Joanna, what are your thoughts about the personal stories, the use of personal stories in the book?
Well, he really starts off the book with a really intense story. So it really kind of sets things off a bit, talking about just a parent who would discipline with physical force. And so I think there's a place for personal stories, especially himself and siblings. And I think that's someone writing a book about siblings. I think it's good to include some of that. So I think it was off balance sometimes, I think, yeah. But I think it's good to have that in a book like this, but the degree to which he did, not necessarily needed that much, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I actually felt a lot of the storytelling was quite compelling. It was intriguing. I wasn't, to Ryan's point, I wasn't quite sure what type of book I was reading there at times. I actually kind of felt the personal stories are more compelling than the research itself that he was citing. So I think he actually used the stories to prop up, some of that research. But yeah, it was tough. It was very anecdotal at times, and he would give a lot of examples from his own life or other examples, and then he would kind of go back on it and say, well, actually the research is very subjective. But I guess we'll get more into that piece of it. Your question was more about the stories itself, but the stories are a huge part of this book.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a roller coaster, and it opened up in my mind, it was the sibling effect was definitely part of it, but there was also so many other questions I had or influences that I noticed that could have shaped and shifted who he has become today. By the way, I should say, in his own words, the sibling effect is the profound power your siblings have to shape who you are and who you become. So your parents leave your life all too early. Your spouse and your children don't come along until much later. Your siblings are with you throughout the entire journey. Sisters have ways of socializing brothers into the mysteries of girls. Brothers have ways of socializing sisters into the puzzle that is boys. So that's his own answer in an interview that he did. So I just wanted to throw that out there for a bit of context as we get rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah, he definitely hits that point that, he says, friends may come and go, parents may leave before us, but siblings, to one degree or another, could be with us, could be the people who know us throughout our life, right? From our early childhood into our old age, and that's different. We don't always have that with other people. So,
Mm-hmm.
And he does talk a little bit about or the importance of kind of nurturing those relationships even as you're growing older.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Working through childhood difficulties. It's not a self-help book. I want to point that out too. It's not a how-to book or anything like that. It's not very prescriptive at all, but he does talk about some research and kind of poses his own opinions about how ideally, siblings would get close and would get close again, maybe in their adulthood, because they share these common bonds together. So
Yeah.
So Brooke, what did you think about the stories? Did you like it?
I think I was impartial to them. Like, I also started this book very late. So my goal was to try and get as far along in the book as humanly possible before tonight. So I don't think I was really overthinking it. I was reading it for the sake of reading it. So I feel like I was quite neutral towards them.
Okay.
Sometimes I found that I was like, okay, great, another example, here we go, and kind of sped through it. Other ones, I noticed I would slow down and read a little deeper, so they caught my attention more, just kind of depending on where it was or what was going on. It would have been nice to have other examples of siblings, but I guess as well, like he's not a researcher of siblings. So, and he's not a clinician that works specifically with siblings or has that breadth, right? So he's not going to necessarily have the same pool of examples, if that makes sense. Like,
Yep.
yeah. So he commented on some famous siblings, but not really stories about them or research about them, just like one-line snippets. So maybe a bit more variety would have been nice. And
Sure. Yes, at one point he talks about the Kennedys. He talks about the Kennedy siblings and how the oldest Kennedy boy, Joe Jr., had died in World War II. He was supposed to be kind of the heir to the throne in a way, kind of the as firstborns, and we'll talk more about birth order goes, but he's kind of supposed to be the big shot of the family. But as he died, then John F. Kennedy kind of stepped into that role. And then, of course, we know what happened with John F. Kennedy. So Bobby Kennedy stepped into that role. So it's like this interesting handing down of this this kind of primary role in the family and the siblings. Yeah. So a few things he talks about. One thing I'd like to start with maybe is the conflicts. He talks a lot about the way that siblings, even in their early days, in their childhood, they can fight a lot. They fight with each other quite a bit, and a lot of times that's sort of it's an education for them, kind of teaching them how to resolve conflict, how to engage in conflict, when to avoid it, that sort of thing.
I think the stat he gave was on average they fight 6.5 times per hour, but that was like an interaction fight, not just like a name call or a push, like not a microaggression. It was actually an engagement of an argument or a fight of some sort. So if you were to count the microaggressions, it would be much, much higher than that. So 6.5 times in 1 hour. Woo! Once every 10 minutes. That's a lot.
That is a lot. And but he says that he believes that that's something that's functional, something that teaches us both kind of some resilience, you might say, or some ways to both have love for a person and also have arguments with them. And it's something that's formative for a lot of people. Of course, not all these arguments and fights are constructive. Sometimes they can be very destructive or even traumatizing. So
yeah, he kind of highlighted that, didn't he? How a lot of these I guess they can learn a lot of conflict resolution, but often for these micro arguments, everything's totally fine. It blows over and they're hanging out and engaging again. But I guess there's bigger disagreements that can take place that could lead to more issues. But
certainly. Yeah, he cited a study where they talked to kids and asked them to pick a point of a problem, a point of contention between them, and try to come up with a solution, and try to figure out how many of them were able to come to a good solution, how many weren't able to do that, or ones where they just kind of gave up on the process, like they just kind of stepped away. And for the most part, the kids were able to come up with a reasonable solution to their problem. And oftentimes it was a compromise, not always. Sometimes one kid just won, the other didn't, but they would oftentimes find a compromise. They also did the same study with a parent involved and found that to some degree, it was a little bit better when a parent was involved. Not all the time, because parents tend to talk too much.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. But they were able to come to some resolution.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Didn't
and
he
that
talk about,
resolution took a little bit longer, right? Like it took about double the amount of time compared to when they were left to their own devices.
Mhm.
yeah. But sometimes he will present studies and then he'll kind of critique the studies that he presented, right? Like for instance, didn't he talk about the bystander effect, or not bystander effect, but the observer effect? If someone's observing the interactions,
Mhm.
the kids are more likely to be collaborative and compromise, right? So it was more challenging to see how kids handle these situations in a real life scenario. Did I understand that correctly? That it was
Yeah.
a little more difficult to kind of record that.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. The Hawthorne effect, right?
That's it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So there's a lot of that, and to be fair, he did try to talk about the limitations of some of the research to a large degree, especially when he got into the birth order stuff, which might be a segue into birth order for us.
Yeah.
Probably.
Mhm.
Probably.
They're
So
a well-known psychologist or psychiatrist who spent a lot of time talking about birth order.
Geez, I'm not sure who that was.
Sigmund Freud? No, maybe a little bit actually, but not.
No.
Carl, yeah, Jung? No. Alfred Adler.
Oh,
We're
it wasn't one of us that said it. It was Chris. Chris
We're
mentioned
fortunate
Adler today. I'll talk about
that,
evolutionary psychology at some point. We'll do a trade-off.
We're fortunate to have two Adlerians here.
Yeah, so we can have a broad discussion about this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Adler, he taught, we learned about birth order when learning more about Adlerian stuff, but yeah, he just talked about how birth order can kind of shape a child, can shape their development, or a theory says that it, depending where you're born in terms of your siblings could have some predictors regarding your development and your personality, essentially. He did know that there's other things that would also be included, like that would shape personality, like family, community, other aspects. But he did say that birth order was one of those things.
Mhm.
That summarizes it very vaguely. Yeah.
not only that, but there's also this idea that different places in the family tend to be predictive of certain personality characteristics, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
So the idea that firstborns tend to be blank, middleborns this and lastborns that, and even to only children as well.
Mhm. Yeah, so we were briefly discussing birth order before we came on and said, hey, whoa, we should save this. So yeah, part of what we were talking about as well is that when Adler created these, it was quite some time ago, and so nuclear families were more common than like split families or blended families, right? So I think that's something to take into consideration as well. Like, so the book I thought the book did a good job on that, like saying, hey, there's all these there's factors or influencing pieces. And just because you are the oldest child at one point of your life doesn't mean you're always the oldest child, right? If you're end up in a blended family and all of a sudden you might be a middle or a youngest, and how does that impact you? Or if, yeah, like that might get shuffled a bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, didn't in the book he say like there are a lot of studies compared families where that can be tricky, like more research should be done just within the family dynamics, like because there's just so many different factors at play regarding what makes a family the way they are, and it's so hard to be like, well, that, yeah, so that was also, I think, a critique of it.
Yeah, so some other factors as well, with cultural factors, and then evolutionary factors of firstborn and resources, and what resources do you like.
So see, another factor is like socioeconomic status as well.
Sure. And he definitely hit on just the sign of the times, in that nowadays, when a lot of this research, maybe early research, was being done, there was conducted with a lot of nuclear families, right? 2 parents, 2, 4, 5 kids, something like that. Whereas nowadays, there could be a whole host of arrangements that makes up the modern family, right? Blended families and people coming from all sorts of different backgrounds. So really hard with all those variables. As a researcher, it's really difficult to tease out what, anything you can really generalize about an oldest child or a middle child when there are all these different factors involved.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. I think you can broaden that to the sibling effect in general, that it's almost an impossible task to study the impact of these sibling relationships, because there's so many of these confounding factors. There's so many other factors at play, right?
Mhm.
So I do think he does a good job of presenting all the information out there, and he talks about the studies as well as the limitations of it. So I think he does a good job with that part of it, obviously with lots of stories of his own and examples and whatnot. But it's I think it's a challenge of it is just this. I think the research is slim, right? And
Yeah, well, that's true. It's true. And yet research, when they say, statistics aren't perfect, right? There's lies, damn lies, and then statistics, right? So it's really difficult. But at the same time, you can look at some things even anecdotally and see that there may be some things that are trends, at least, and there are always exceptions to the rule here. But he looked at, for example, members of Congress, and members of Congress tended to be firstborn, and on a pretty over the majority of people in the U.S. Congress are firstborns, at least at one point. I'm not sure if this is, of course, it isn't current research, but historically that had been the case. A number of CEOs of companies brought together, and majority of them were firstborn, followed by middleborn, followed by youngest, tend to be the least likely to become the CEO. So some of these trends that you see, and maybe there are multiple factors involved, but when you just look at it like that, there's a trend towards firstborns being a little more, I guess, ambitious in that way, you might say. I don't know.
Yeah, there could be. I think there's some. Well, it depends too. I think there seem to be more like leadership roles or kind of higher achievers, and I think leadership can come into place if you have younger siblings and you have to kind of take care of them or kind of demonstrate that responsibility for your younger siblings. I think there's a lot of attention sometimes placed on firstborns from parents. A lot of attention at first, and then I think it just hard workers, leadership.
He called like the kin role or the kin keeper, something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Mhm.
For the firstborns tend to be the ones who organize the family reunions, research the family tree, this sort of thing, where they're kind of the ones who are in charge of that. There tend to be.
Yeah, unless if the firstborn is unable to do so because of physical, mental, emotional reasons, then an act of dethronement happens by the secondborn. And then the secondborn then absorbs sort of those qualities or traits and becomes the planner, the kinship, the leader, the caregiver, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. This kind of makes me think of Malcolm Gladwell's book. I forget which book it is, but he's got so many good ones about the hockey players up in Canada. So he did a massive, or I guess there was a study done, and the vast majority of professional NHL players or professional hockey players were born in January and February.
That's the 10,000 hours book.
Tipping
Okay.
point.
What's it called?
Was it Tipping Point?
Tipping point.
Oh, okay.
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
You talked
So
about, when you're born during the year, how that plays a role as well.
yeah, so hypothetically, like, wouldn't that be kind of applicable to the older sibling as well? You're the firstborn, you're bigger, Yeah, more opportunities, perhaps you have more focus just based on your maturity. There might be circumstantial factors in terms of why the firstborn may have opportunities that the second, third, and fourthborn don't have.
It was also, they were mentioning, which is true when you think about it, right? So the firstborn and lastborn are the only two siblings that have one-on-one time with the parents. So the firstborn has sole attention from the parents until the secondborn comes around. But then the youngest gets sole attention once everyone's moved on and become independent and doing their thing, right? So it's the middle ones, that don't get that one-on-one. So that might impact development as well.
Sure. And competitiveness as well among the siblings, right?
Yeah. And that was interesting too, like the competitiveness, or just thinking about it in that age range, when he was saying, like when a baby sibling comes, if the sibling that's already there is under the age of 4, then we see regression as they're competing, because they're seeing that like attention and focus is being put on the baby for these behaviors, rightfully so. The baby needs to be changed and fed and all the rest of it. And at that age, the sibling, when they're under 4, still needs that attention from the parents to survive. They still need that. But around the age of 4, the child becomes a little bit more independent, where they're able to somehow figure out how to feed themselves and find food and do these different things. So if they're over the age of 4, then that regression or conflict doesn't seem to happen as much, which I thought that was a really interesting piece, actually.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Also thought it was interesting too, some of the younger siblings have to develop or focus more on humor or creativity or taking risks to get that attention from parents or to stand out from the bunch. So I thought that was interesting. I can't remember if that was, again, just based on more qualitative observations or if that was based on studies, but yeah.
It's you and me, Joe.
Yeah. But how about the middle child? So since we kind of touched on the older and youngest there, like middle children will add their ed, and other studies have shown the middle child might be more the peacekeepers of the family, whether they're kind of having to find their own niche or niche, depending where you live, in the family, and they might be more good at negotiating or compromising. And I think it was said too in the book, they might be more likely to find outside, like to have more friends outside the family, or kind of seek more focus on peer relationships. But sometimes they might get lost in the chaos of things. So those are some of what you might stereotypical middle child.
I'm going to scratch that niche there, Joe, and say that maybe they have to do well interpersonally, just to, there's a very different dynamic there, communicating, connecting with an older sibling versus a younger. So you're kind of in the middle there. So maybe you have to be a little more savvy at that, perhaps.
Totally.
But yeah.
Yes. There was a television program down here in the States. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it. It's called the Brady Bunch.
I was just thinking you were going to say that. They also have an excellent Christmas episode, which we should all watch this year.
A very Brady Christmas.
Yes.
Of course. Wow.
With the mine, getting stuck in the mine.
Oh no.
Which I find it interesting, because oftentimes my thoughts go to that when talking about birth order stuff, because actually the Marcia, Jan, Cindy siblings really do sort of personify a lot of the birth order stereotypes, I guess. Marcia's the oldest, and she's really confident and outgoing and really sure of herself and does her own thing. Cindy is the youngest, and she's always wearing pigtails, and she has a little lisp, and she plays a very cute role on the show. And Jan, the middle child, is complaining about it all the time, or oftentimes. The whole line from her, Marcia, Marcia, Marcia. Like, why is everyone always talking about her? Get her out of the way. Which I don't know if they consulted with Adler or any Adlerians in the creation of that role, but it's I find it kind of interesting that those really do kind of fit the stereotype, don't they?
Mhm. Yeah. I think a lot of TV shows play off the birth order stereotypes, right?
Sure.
Yeah. It's part of the humor. Because I think naturally, I mean, these traits or like the patterns happen for a reason. There's probably patterns to it. And yeah. Yeah. As
Well, let's
long as
get
we can
personal
get a
here.
chuckle, right? We can
Yes.
chuckle out of it.
Always get a chuckle. Can we get personal about this for a second?
Yes.
I'm curious about how these birth order discussions or anything, how's that fit into your own family system, do you think? Do you think that it aligns for you guys, or is it are you outliers?
I'd be curious to get Chris's thoughts on me as the youngest child, and I can give my thoughts on him as a middle child, since we're in the same family. But I think in some ways, us and our two siblings do fit into some stereotypical birth order traits. But yeah, I don't know if you'd agree with that, Chris. We have an older sister, Carolyn, she's the eldest, and she's always been kind of the doer and very good with just leadership. She literally is in HR and kind of takes care of people in that way. We have the second, who's Jeff, who's always the comic and always the one making jokes and into more of the comedy. I think Chris is very much, I don't know, definitely good people skills and definitely good at the negotiating, but you've always just had a really good community of people around you. I don't really know for myself if I'm not necessarily a big rebel in terms of the youngest child, stuff like that, but I think I've definitely been, I don't know, what would you say, Chris?
Yeah, I think for myself, I think I've probably a little more reckless and risk taking, impulsive maybe in some ways, which I guess would typically be more of the younger child traits. I think,
Which you were for a while.
which I was for a while. Yeah, I think. Joanna, I think in a lot of ways you embody the traits of the oldest sibling. They offer that stability and consistency and keep the family together. Less risk-taking behaviors than the rest of us, for sure. So, so I think in some ways we fit the mold, but in lots of ways we don't, right?
Mhm.
So we can probably pick certain traits that do, but I could probably pick, also traits that don't, right?
Yeah. Well,
But
with Joanna though, as well, we mentioned this before the taping, but it changes if there's 4 years or more between the sibling. So which between you two there is, right? Isn't there 4 years between you two?
Yeah, Chris
Yeah.
was, yeah.
So in which case Joanna would take more of the role of like an only child or an oldest sibling, like she would, according to Adler, at least. So yeah, if there's 4 years or more, then that you would no longer fit the stereotype of the youngest.
Yeah, but I think in some ways our older sister, we always joke around about older sister was definitely really rebellious in her teenage years and didn't quite have that the stability. But as she got older, my goodness, she really took over that role for sure. But yeah, it's quite subjective. But we are also very, very, very fortunate that we all had very strong attachments with our parents. And to my knowledge, like in the book, Jeffrey, he talks about how it's usually like kids who have stronger connections or who are favored by the parents. And to my knowledge, I don't know if you disagree, Joe, but I don't think any of us were favored more than the rest. I think they were extremely good at trying to adapt and honor our differences and be supportive in so many different ways.
Yep.
But unless Joanna is the favored one and they just kept that from me, which could be the case, but
They
Yeah,
don't keep that from you. Your dad says it every week.
I know.
I think he's joking, isn't he? No?
But I don't, I don't remember that being a big thing. I know as adults, I think it's joked about sometimes of who might be the favorite, and it's usually joked about that it's me. But I don't. I think they've done a very good job of, not really making any favorite. I think, anyways, I'd agree with you, Chris. Jeffrey in the book, I wonder, he talked about favoritism, and he says even if your parents say there isn't, there always is. He just seemed very clear cut on that. But he says a point, and then he said, like, look, they're your first child, you have all these pictures and albums, and then come the second and third child, there's not as many pictures. And I'm like, that doesn't necessarily mean that one child is more of a favorite. It's just, have you been a parent with multiple kids? Like, that just doesn't happen. Like, yeah, like, I just don't think that was a point to prove there's favoritism. So I found that a little bit with some of his stuff. I was like, the younger sibling tends to be shorter. Look at Eli Manning and Peyton Manning. See, that's where it happens. And it's like,
Yeah.
I'm actually taller than my sister. Like
it's like confirmation bias at times. He's like
Yeah.
seeking information examples that fit his points, right?
Yeah.
he happened to pick at the beginning of the book all the president's younger siblings who were not doing well, and it just made it seem like the younger sibling is gonna like go into debt or have addiction or really not do well under the shadow of the older sibling. And I just think that was I just don't think that's the case across the board. So anyways, just a few issues I had, I think, with the book. I found myself being like, oh man, I feel like that doesn't really prove a point at all.
He also mentions that on average, or wherever the study was, that siblings tend to lose 3 IQ points for every sibling going down. Which, I mean, that just can't be. I don't know.
Yeah, impossible.
That's
But
impossible.
wasn't that like the effect size? Right? I'm not sure how.
Sure.
Again, the study he was referring to, I think, wasn't it based on 10 people or something? I don't know.
It wasn't massive.
And clearly, there are older siblings who conducted that study.
I've got it.
Exactly.
I just back to the favoritism thing. I've been with you guys in person a few times, and I've seen both you guys give talks before, and hung out with your families, and I've heard both of you jokingly refer to yourselves as your parents' favorite child, right? Giving a talk or starting a presentation, here I am, I'm my parents' favorite child, which
Sure.
I know it's a joke and it's just a way to kind of poke fun at all of that, but I just think it's funny that you guys.
If I ever send my mom money for something through like Interact transfer, you have to have like a question and a password. So I'd be like, your favorite, the question is, or the was, who's your favorite child? And then so my mom's really sharp. She's like, oh, it's great, I got it in the 4th try. Doesn't miss a beat. But I think the reason why we joke around about it is because it's not a point of contention. Like, you're really, it's not something that has been an issue growing up. But
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Also, I've got to say that it would be tough to be a peacekeeper in a family where there's actually no conflict. So, you're out of luck. You got nothing to do.
Yeah.
Chris, if you're the middle child and try to keep the peace, but everyone's pretty cool, then you don't really have much to do.
Good point. There it is.
Is there a lot of fighting amongst like you, Carolyn, and Jeff at all?
Yeah, well, growing up, of course, again, these dynamics are so different among families, but I definitely wanted to play more by myself a bit. With that separation, my Jeff and I would definitely disagree on things and battle it out. Carolyn kind of did, she was a little bit older and kind of focused more on friendships, I think. I don't think she played as much with us, but definitely disagreements, but they started to decrease the older we got. So as we got out of high school, I think that's where they started to become less frequent, but nothing crazy major, no major conflicts there. But yeah, no, but we were fortunate because we are very, very close. There's a lot of reasons why that is. But I'm curious about the dynamics there with your siblings.
Yeah.
Brooke and
Brooke,
Ryan.
why don't you go? What do you got?
I'm middle child, but only girls. So I think that makes a bit of a difference as well. Older
Sure.
brother's 3 years older, younger brother is 1 year younger, like 16 months or something like that. So we're almost like Irish twins, I think they call it, right? When you have 2 children, different birth years, but within 12 months of each other.
Yeah.
So like, but yeah, no, I think I dethroned my older brother and took the roles of the oldest, because I'm the kin keeper. Like I host the family dinners, I organize the events, I make sure all the things are taken care of and that kind of stuff. But I was definitely more middle child in the sense of like, yeah, more independent, more social focused, that sort of thing. And kind of having to compromise a lot as well. Although I think my brothers compromised a lot too, with me being a girl. They had to compromise sometimes to the things, maybe I wanted to do different things than what they wanted to, or TV shows, or growing up, that kind of stuff. Yeah, but I think I have many traits of a middle child. I kind of chuckle at those, but I also have some of an oldest for sure. Yeah. But my older brother definitely has more of like the care, like the nurturing caregiver part. And then I'm more the like logistical take care of things part.
The doer.
Yeah, I'm the doer, but he's the, I will drop anything to help you do what you need to do. And I'm going to check in on you if you're not feeling well. And I'm going to worry about you if you're not feeling well. Like he's definitely more that way. Yeah. And then my younger brother, I think there's some traits of a younger, more in the sense of like wanting to keep up. Like I wouldn't consider him, like attention seeking or appearing young or anything like that. I think he was kind of on par, but wanting to keep up, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's good. Were you protective of him? Did you ever find yourself like protecting him?
Hugely protective of him. Yeah. And I think both of my brothers are hugely protective with me back. I'm protective of my older one as well, but not as much. More towards my younger. Yeah.
If there was I don't know, an issue that would fit this in the family, would you and the siblings kind of bond together versus parents ever? Was that the sort of thing like, where are we going on vacation? Well, we're all voting for this. You guys vote, that sort of thing.
Maybe we might have bonded to like, I don't know, try and sway them for something, but they never really fell for that anyway. My parents were pretty good with boundaries around that stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't think it would have ever really worked. Yeah, probably not. And then, yeah, I don't think, similar for favorite children stuff, I don't think my parents really, I think they were quite diplomatic as well. Like they treat us all slightly differently based on what we all need. Like if that makes any sense. And they connect with us all differently based on how we all like to connect. And there were different resources poured into different people, but those resources were to play to their strengths, if that made any sense. Yeah, so I think they did really well there. And maybe at different times in life, they might have had different favorites as they went through, but I don't think that they have, like, whoever was the easiest one in that moment was probably their favorite for that year. But now that we're all adults, I don't think that that's really the case. I think that I think when we think of favorites, it's not just like the emotional love or connection, I think is there for all of us. It's just who they need to then support more with resources. So then I think that's kind of the misconception for kids growing up, is different children need different things at different times, but that's not actually love. That's just helping that person develop. So
it's a great point.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
So here's a little favoritism Christmas crossover here. I remember being like 7 years old and asking my mom, Mom, which present from the three of us did you like the most? Right? Her saying, well, I liked them all very, equally, and I loved what you got me. And I said, okay. Well, which present did you give to us that you felt was the best present?
And that's when you knew you'd be a therapist.
I was looking for angles there. How else could I, discern this? Distill this down a little bit. But no, still didn't get anywhere. She blocked me on all those.
Clever.
That's funny.
What about in your family, Ryan? How are you with you're the youngest. Do you think you take some of
Yeah.
the streets?
I'm the youngest, and so it's my sister and then my brother, and they're 2 years apart, and then 5 years, and then me. So I was youngest, like obviously the youngest, right? They had already built up a whole relationship between the two of them that was pretty strong by the time I came around. But I think I definitely benefited a lot. My sister was certainly a very nurturing person. She's the one who taught me to read as a kid. She also taught my brother to read. And I think my first word, her name's Barbara, but used to call her Barbie. But my first word was actually Bobby. I couldn't say the R, So I actually said her name first. She was a very central figure in my life for sure. So and also just as far as firstborn stuff, she also pretty ambitious and very driven and social and all these different things in her life. So she had a lot of those qualities. My brother was more the rebel. He was more kind of stepping out, doing his own thing, kind of marching to his own drum a lot of times. Very, very smart, very gifted and talented. But definitely like to bend the rules whenever he could. And he and I fought quite a bit because I was the pesky younger brother. I would try to tag along with him all the time. I would, imitate him, all that kind of stuff, and he would tease me mercilessly. I mean, it got pretty brutal at times. So yeah, we were probably those siblings who would fight 6 times an hour. But honestly, we would. I'd try to play with him for an hour, and I don't think he would do that. He was like, I don't want this little guy around. Get away from me. But I also learned, because he did get in trouble a bit more than I did. He was a little more aggressive in that way. I always felt like I kind of learned what not to do by some of the things that he would do. I'd look and see, oh, this is the sort of thing that gets you in trouble. So I'll step away from that. I won't go there. And as a result, I didn't get in trouble quite as much with my parents, which was fine. And I do think that my role, I resonated with a lot of the stuff he was saying in the book as being kind of the comic relief, or kind of the creative, jokey, the youngest sibling being there kind of as a entertainment at times. Like I particularly remember sitting around the dinner table, I'd make weird faces or say silly things, and it would kind of break the tension at times, or make everyone laugh, and that was a lot of fun. There were other factors involved, of course. There was some tension in the family for sure, and I kind of felt like I kind of needed to do that at times, because there was some tense moments. But as we grew up, though, I really think that a lot of those differences. My sister is still very loving and nurturing and warm, and she'll have me to Thanksgiving once in a while, that sort of thing. And my brother and I are in a good place. We no longer fight with each other. We no longer have physical battles with one another. But I think that it's like things kind of evened out as we got to adulthood. They're certainly my big siblings. I look to them for guidance and advice, that sort of thing, once in a while. But I think as far as our personalities are concerned, I think we've kind of evened out.
Cool. You guys, you and your siblings live in different cities, right? Your brother's up in Portland, and
Yeah,
sister's in San Fran, I think, right? You're
Yeah.
down in Pasadena, so
yeah,
that shifts things a bit in terms of how often you can communicate and connect.
yeah. Honestly, one of the best things for us has been having a text thread together, because we, we
Nice.
have a little group group text that the three of us will share different little bits about our own families or funny things going on in our lives. And that's been a great way for technology to help us in a very easy way stay connected.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think my relationship with my siblings, now that we're adults, has gotten a lot closer since we started a text thread, which was really just a few years ago. I don't know why we didn't do
Yeah,
it
me too.
10 years ago, but it's really, I don't know, it's probably been 5 years or so. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it really is. It works out really well.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, that's good. Thanks for sharing the personal side of this. It's interesting. I also having kids, right? I have two kids. They're about 2.5, 3 years apart from one another. And they have their own personalities and their own quirks. It's interesting because I've caught myself through the years, oftentimes thinking, I kind of feel like my younger child behaves like a firstborn, more so than my older child, which is kind of an interesting thought. And maybe that's maybe my own stereotypes of what that should look like or what that might look like. The younger one is just more, I guess, kind of assertive and kind of knows what he wants. And, well, I'm just going to go for this. And he'll even boss the older one around a little bit. And I guess that's just about me kind of having to reconfigure what my thoughts are about birth order. But it is interesting. I've often caught myself wondering, I wonder what it'd be like if that was switched, if the person who was the firstborn became the secondborn, or that kind of were able to switch. I wonder what those relationships would look very, very different, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not that we can do that, but it is an interesting thought experiment, at least.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of neat for you to observe those dynamics, especially as a psychologist as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes. I make those observations and then I charge them. I take money out of their college fund and put it in my pocket.
I was going to say, yeah, deduct their funds.
Right.
Yeah. Therapeutically, though, I know that question comes up quite a bit. Do you have any siblings? And what are your, if it's an older sibling or younger sibling, what is your sibling up to right now? I often ask that question. Try to understand the dynamic there. Are they close? Are they not?
Yeah.
What are those dynamics like within the family? So I think within all intake sessions or first sessions, I think I usually do ask about siblings, right?
I've in the last few years, I've changed that general question to who was in your household growing up, right? Because there are a couple times where I got caught asking about siblings and then found out later on, there were like 3 other people living in the house as well, who may also have a big influence on their lives. So
yeah, good point.
I certainly want to know who the siblings are, but who was in your household? Who all was there? You might find other people around.
Oh, for sure. And that's a really good point. But I try not to have any preconceived notions in terms of what that means. Sure. To be honest, when it comes to sibling or order, I just try to get their perception of it or try to understand those dynamics that they grew up in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's super important. Yeah.
So
and how their relationships are now. And yeah, I think there's a lot to that, right? Because these relationships then create templates for later on in life for different things, whether that's, authority figures at work, or if it's friendships or relationships, or the family unit is just learning how people interact together.
Sure. And it's not always the younger sibling that is struggling and the older sibling that has it all together. It's been flipped around quite a few times as well. But those dynamics can be very difficult as well for clients or for individuals, is that one sibling is just rocking it. Everything's just kind of connecting for them. Other one is the struggling a bit, and what that means within that family context and dynamic,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd like to ask the question, what was your role in your family?
Me too. I like to ask that as well. Yeah.
Without without making any assumptions, I guess, about birth order stuff in particular, but what generally was your role? And people usually have an answer. I mean, it's
Mhm.
oftentimes a real role, at least they felt they played, might be different perceived by others, but at least for them, they felt they played this certain role.
And that's all that really matters in therapy.
Yep.
What is your perception of it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah. So do you guys, just out of curiosity, even though like I'm around the Boyd family quite often, but I don't think I've ever asked you guys this question, but as adults, when you're around your siblings, so holidays are coming up, if we do end up seeing our families at the holidays, do you ever feel that you fall back into those old traps of birth order, or where like pecking order, or like, as if you were 8 years old? Like, this is my role at the table, this is my role in the family, this is how people like, do those old themes come back to you?
Good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. Yeah, it's a hard one for me to answer. I think as I sometimes am aware that I'm the youngest, or I sometimes maybe get it in my head that I might not know as much about something, or I might not be taken as seriously.
Yeah.
But so I think that still happens at times for me, but I'm putting that out there. I'm not necessarily getting that from people.
Mhm.
I just might, think about that sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Our brother can be quite outgoing, has his moments, quite humorous. So sometimes he can carry the conversation a bit, or
Mhm.
so I think in maybe the family dynamic compared to maybe how I converse with friends, or the dynamic with friends, I may sit back a bit more,
Mhm.
the dinner table, listen
Yeah.
a bit more.
Mhm.
So maybe that's something perhaps.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Chris. Me as well. Yeah. Yeah. So once it's in that dynamic and the things are happening, then I'm definitely less a retreat more, for sure. And I
Yeah.
definitely feel that like everyone goes back into their roles of the unit. And then there's expectations that the people do that, or you just know how they're going to interact with each other or whatever. It's very interesting. I don't think my family has really grown out of that interaction yet, even though there's like nephews and nieces or grandchildren for my parents or whatever. And then they have their own layer of how they interact and what happens. And yeah, it's really interesting. What about for you, Ryan?
I do think some things are similar, but I agree with Joe. I like your point there, Joe, that I think a lot of it is probably in my head to start off with. I might make an assumption of, oh, I'm the youngest. I don't get to make the decisions, or I need to defer to others. But I think my siblings actually do a really good job of including me in a lot of that. But having said that, like I said before, my siblings have their own sort of established relationship. I feel like they have a sense of humor that they really make each other laugh, and I just don't have that same impact on them, which I just think that goes way back to when they were little kids. But I do feel like I belong. And in fact, a few years ago, my sister asked me to perform her wedding ceremony. So
Mhm.
I mean, that's a great honor, a huge honor, So I was happy to be the baby brother marrying my sister. I mean, performing the ceremony, right? And so yeah, I do think there's some that's probably just remnants in my own head.
It's such a Freudian thing to say,
Yes,
There is.
it certainly is.
Yeah, how impactful that must have been, though.
Yeah,
Got knocked out of the park.
I had a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It was a nice time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. No, good questions. Well, let's get down to rating this book, shall we? This is something that we do when we don't actually talk to the author in a interview. We rate the book on a scale of 1 to 10. What would you give The Sibling Effect?
Okay, I have a number.
Oh, that's right. We're not going to tell. We're going to.
Should I write it down?
I don't know. Don't we usually just take turns and explain
Well,
why quickly?
Oh,
well, we don't
Rob,
want anyone to change their vote.
we had feedback from a listener
Oh.
who said maybe you should write it down somewhere and then.
Actually, we were supposed to
Keep it
write it
changes.
down before we even discussed it, but
Oh, darn.
that's okay. We'll do it this way. I'm going to write it down on this piece of paper. What I give the sibling effect. Show it at the same time. You ready?
1 second.
We're gonna explain why once we.
Yeah,
see it,
once
or-
we show it. We don't want to feel biased by one another's
Okay.
votes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wrote down my number.
Okay. Ready?
Okay, I'm going to show my number. I got a pad.
Are we
here.
all showing at the same time?
Let's
Yeah.
try.
Okay, ready?
Ready?
1, 2, 3,
three.
go.
Oh, Joey can't read it. Oh, I see it. I see it.
Um,
Wow, that's pretty
Wow.
close.
Wait, so for the people,
What's yours, Ryan?
Mine's a 6.
Ryan,
Wow.
Brooke is a 6, Chris is 6.1, and I'm 5.75.
Wowzers.
Wow, that
It's
is
the closest we've ever been.
that's amazing. Yes.
What a reveal. That was exhilarating. That was like Christmas Eve. My gosh. We should do this every book podcast.
You just love your numbers, eh?
I do love my numbers.
You do.
There's such comfort in numbers. They're great.
6. Well, we all gave a round of 6, right? I guess it would average to be just right about 6. So, why?
Who wants to
I-
go?
Yeah, I just thought it was okay. Like, I don't know. I think there's value in it. I think he puts together a lot of research, kind of Malcolm Gladwell in that way. Just like, here's all these things that I've just read up on. He is good having some of his own personal experience and some food for thought, but there's some stuff that I just didn't necessarily agree with, or I just kind of questioned, like the confirmation bias stuff. And yeah, just some of the language he used. I was like, I think it's okay. I'm probably not going to look at it again. Not really probably going to recommend it to anyone. But I just think there's if someone's interested in the sibling stuff, you're going to find some interesting stats in there to think about. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you said. Yeah, I think it's easy to read. Like, so a variety of skill levels could read this book. And I think if you're interested in siblings, you're going to learn something from it. You're going to take away things. It's going to make you think. It's going to make you think about yourself and be introspective. Is it the best book out there? Probably not. Is it the worst book? No, not at all. So I'm like, it's kind of like neutral, but maybe slightly better than neutral. I would recommend it to someone if I really thought it was going to be the right fit, with a disclaimer of like, this is going to give you a good snapshot maybe of some of those interactions or birth order, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, it would have a disclaimer with the recommendation for sure. Chris?
Yeah, that's a good point. I agree with what you're both saying. Yeah, I thought as you mentioned Malcolm Gladwell, like there's usually a flow to the story. I think Jeffrey, he does a good job of presenting all the information that's out there when it comes to sibling studies, but it's thin. It's the research is, often, he often says like the problem is that there's nothing that's super proven here or something that's super firm. So but then he adds a whole bunch of examples and anecdotes. So he says that it's tough to prove this. Then he'll go back to, the confirmation of these theories through examples. So there's kind of this back and forth type of dynamic there. I thought the personal stories were quite interesting and compelling. I think it was kind of propped up by unfortunately a area of research that needs a lot more attention. So is the sibling effect real? Absolutely. Are there other factors that are probably more prevalent and more impactful? Absolutely. So
Oh, Brian has a thing.
yeah.
Hey guys. Just as a little special Christmas treat here, I just ambushed my sister my sister Barbara House from the Bay Area, and she's on the phone right now. Barb, can you hear us?
I can. Hi.
I'm
Hi,
Barbara.
Barb.
Hi.
All right. So I just pulled her on, and she doesn't really even know what we were talking about. We were talking about siblings and this book, The Sibling Effect. And I was talking about how Barb was, I felt like an ideal kind of older sister, older sibling. She did have leadership qualities and all of that. But I just was curious from your point of view, Barb, how do you feel like we as siblings kind of interacted with one another? Did we have roles? Did we have kind of standard, typical roles that we played in the family?
Wow. Yeah, I actually think we did. And I think I sometimes wonder if part of it was because I'm the only girl in the family, and I maybe, in kind of being the oldest, maybe had a little bit of a mothering effect, especially after we lost our mother. So that might have amped up a little bit. We definitely, you and I, do give our other brother, the middle sibling, a hard time at times for being having the middle sibling qualities of never quite being old enough, but also not kind of the baby of the family. And then you, Ryan, I still call you my baby brother Ryan, and you're not a baby anymore. but I think there was some of that, and I think it did play out as we grew up. I tended to be the good kid, and and Jeff tended to be the rebel, and you turned out to be the better kid.
Oh, I don't know about that. We did talk a little bit about the, and my recollection was that around the dinner table and stuff like that. At least I remember you guys laughing at me a lot. Was that because I was trying to be funny, or what was that whole role about, do you think?
Well, yeah, you were funny. You were entertaining. You were adorable. You had sayings and things that you said that we still, maybe it's because we were a little older, so we could kind of grab onto that and kind of maybe in a way make fun of it, but it's part of our language today. For example, you called the potato peeler a shick because of the noise it made. And I think everybody in our family and our extended family now calls it a shick because of that. And that was from you. And it was both cute and also, entertaining in some ways.
That it doesn't have another name, does it? Isn't it called the shick? Is that the official title?
It is called a shick, and I think we have 4 of them in our house right now.
That's great. That's great. Yes. And I was just as another note here, just talking about the fact that, as far as us, the 3 of us as siblings, actually, I think having a text thread over the last couple of years has been one of the coolest parts for me, just having that regular contact with one another. Right.
Well, yeah, I think it's been a fantastic way to just kind of stay connected and just kind of bring up maybe some old things that we all laugh at or know each other would find funny or heartwarming or insightful. But it's almost like we have our own little, I don't know if anybody else in the world would kind of understand some of what we're texting about, or anybody else would find it as funny or heartwarming.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we kind of have our own culture that we grew up in, right, with our family and family vacations and traditions and all of that, right?
Yeah, and we could sit around with, I could sit around with my husband and tell him all I want about these things, but he's not going to get it the same way that you and Jeff would get it.
That's right. Yeah, that's great. That's cool. Well, thank you, Barb, for coming on to talk about this stuff. It's a nice little surprise for us all.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And just remember, I'm the oldest, so you have to honor me.
Absolutely. Yeah, really nice to meet you.
Anyway, thank you.
Cool. I'll call you later, Barb.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Barb.
That's awesome. I just texted her. I felt like we needed to have an oldest siblings perspective here, you know?
That's perfect. Yeah, we thought you got called away for something. So I
Yeah.
was trying to drag out my my summary of the book there.
Well, that worked out all right.
Sure did. That's great.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the summaries. I think I would agree with everything you said. I think it's maybe a good starter for people. If you're interested in siblings, I think it's a good place to start. Although I do think there are probably some other books that might address it a little more directly without so much of the story. Or if you're just into listening to the stories, that's good too. This is not a bad book to start with.
Yeah.
So there we go. All of us give it a 6. We don't know what our next book is going to be.
Oh, are we going to do the pain one?
Yes, we're going to do the pain one. What's that called?
It's called The Way Out by Alan Gordon.
Okay. Alan Gordon or Corden?
That's a good question. Let me double check. Gordon.
Gordon.
Yeah.
Okay. Alan Gordon. All right. That will be our next book. That'll be in a month plus. And we will get those books and move forward with that.
Awesome.
Okay, everybody.
Well then, Merry
All
Christmas
right.
to you all.
Have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Yes. And be kind to your siblings, everybody.
I'll try.
Yes. Be kind to the Jeffs in your life. We didn't really address the fact that we all have Jeffs as brothers,
Yeah.
right?
Older brother's named Jeff.
Yeah. So if you find a Jeff, be kind to your Jeff. All right. So that's it for this time around. Merry Christmas, and like and subscribe on Apple, Google, Podbean, Audible, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube. Send your questions to info@mentalhealthbootcamp.com. Visit us on Facebook or Instagram. Tell a friend or two, or tell your siblings. And that'll be enough. And we will bid you farewell and Merry Christmas.
Merry
Merry
Christmas.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye now.
Thanks for listening.